Meet Elise, a 33-year-old corporate professional who's been happily married to Luke for 2 years. Luke, 3 years her senior, works at a sister company to hers. Since the beginning, they've been residing with his parents in a two-family home arrangement. Luke, the younger of 2 brothers, has an elder sibling named Cody, who's 6 years his senior. Before Elise and Luke tied the knot, it seemed like Cody and his parents were the primary occupants of the household. However, Cody's wife, Krist, known for her talkative nature and competitive spirit, often found herself at odds with her equally strong-willed mother-in-law. Eventually, Cody and his father had enough of the family disputes and decided to move out. Despite living alone since he started working, Luke and Elise never seriously considered the idea of residing separately from his parents. So, when Luke's mom suddenly declared that they would be moving in after marriage, it caught both Elise and Luke off guard. Elise had assumed they would continue living in her current apartment until they decided to start a family, as it was convenient for her commute. However, it seemed that living together was inevitable in their family's eyes. Although the idea initially unsettled them, they realized that the commute wouldn't differ much whether they stayed at Luke's apartment or his parents' house. Besides, the ancestral home, crafted by Luke's grandfather, boasted both a main house and a guest house, promising ample privacy. Reluctantly, they agreed to move in. However, Elise soon found herself regretting the decision. Luke's mother, in her mid-60s, began complaining about back pain and dizziness, leaving all household chores from cleaning to laundry and shopping squarely on Elise's shoulders. As a full-time worker, even sharing chores with Luke barely managed to keep our lives and his parents' lives in order. Then, an unexpected financial burden hit us. Firstly, the guest house needed serious renovations. Initially appearing livable from the outside, stepping in revealed a dire need for more than just patch jobs. The bathroom, kitchen, roof, floors, everything showed significant wear and tear. Yet it was our space, and naturally, we committed to paying for the renovations. What caught us off guard was when my mother-in-law demanded the same renovations for the main house upon seeing the newly refurbished guest house. It seemed inconceivable to fix up our space and leave them in a rundown place. However, we couldn't afford to do everything all at once. "Why is Elise working then? To support us, her in-laws?" my mother-in-law questioned. "Exactly, Luke, we blessed you with marriage. You should serve us in return." So not only did they want the house renovated, but they also desired new high-end furniture and appliances, claiming the newly renovated rooms deserved the best. Additionally, they made us pay for every little thing, from groceries to household items. Thanks to this situation, Luke and I struggled to save even a tiny bit of money every month. Just as we approached the 3rd year, my mother-in-law and the Cody couple suddenly dropped the bomb. "We're moving in, you have to move out." Christy explained that Cody got laid off, although he was actually spared but chose to leave to save a colleague with kids. Despite having 1-year-old twins himself, he was deemed more responsible due to his prestigious university background. Facing this ultimatum, Luke and I sat down with my in-laws, pleading our case for hours until we finally conceded. "Fine, we'll move out this week." It was clear that we had no other choice. "We've learned plenty about family from you, mother-in-law and father-in-law. It's time to put that wisdom into practice, right, Luke?" I teased, glancing at my husband. "Ha, finally getting it, are you?" Luke chuckled. "Yeah, just like Elise said, we're happy to do it." "Great, case closed," he affirmed. With that, Luke and I turned our backs on our chuckling in-laws and headed for the guest house. 2 weeks later, we had movers arranged and relocated with no time to spare. Opting for the full packing service due to time constraints, we timed our move during my in-laws' regular lunch at karaoke with friends to avoid any complaints about the items we were taking. We wrapped up all the formalities in 3 days, utilizing our paid leaves and starting our new life. However, one day, I received a call from the front desk at work, informing me that someone claiming to be family was there to see me. I had a feeling she'd show up soon, but I didn't expect her to barge in on me instead of Luke. Quickly texting Luke about the situation, I braced myself for the inconvenience. Luke's response came swiftly, suggesting that we ask Maya to step out for a meeting to avoid causing trouble at the office. Passing the message to the front desk, we managed to make our in-laws leave as agreed. That night, as Luke and I pulled into the parking lot of our in-laws' compound, they, along with Cody and his spouse, rushed out of the main house and guest house to greet us. Upon closer inspection, I noticed that both my in-laws had a baby strapped to their backs, probably Cody's twins. As I locked the car, Cody's voice boomed angrily. Hey, how dare you show up here in my parents' cars? Luke remained composed, retorting, Your parents' cars? Which ones are those? This seemed to infuriate Cody even more. The cars you both drove up in, obviously, he exclaimed. Well, Cody, both these cars were purchased by us. Our names are even on the registration certificates. Would you like to see? Luke interjected, stepping in. I've been annoyed by how our parents drive these cars as if they own them. We let it slide because we live together, but now there's no need to lend them out, right? I added, feeling a surge of irritation. Don't forget Dad-in-law has that old minivan he used for work, Chrissy chimed in, glaring at us. Who cares about that old car? Spat Cody. But it's perfect for twins, isn't it? You can fit 2 car seats, I retorted, attempting to reason. Our back and forth made our in-laws uncomfortable. After seeing Cody receive a talking to about the cars, they jumped in. What about the furniture and the appliances? Taking them while we're away. That's stealing, not just from the main house, but also from the guest house, Cody argued. Yes, Cody and I can't live without those, Chrissy added. Why would we have to leave them? Look, I get what you're saying. We're using the guest house anyway. But there's no reason to dip into the main house too, Luke reasoned. Why isn't that stuff we all pitched in for? I asked, trying to understand their logic. Such arrogance. Even so, once you gave it, it's ours, father-in-law fired back. Whoa, hold on. We never gave you anything. We just lent it. There's no memory of us ever saying we're giving it to you, and there's no transfer of ownership on paper, Luke countered, shocking both our in-laws. We were living together, so we lent stuff as a courtesy. Now that we're living separately, why would we keep lending you things? We just took back what's ours. Is that a problem? Luke continued, exchanging smiles with me. Well, we have washing machines and fridges too. You don't need 2 of each, do you? They argued. Exactly, so why not lend it to us again? Wherever you've moved, stuffing everything into a small space will just make it even more cramped, Luke concluded. We exchanged grins, acknowledging our cramped living situation. True, we're pretty packed right now, I admitted. Absolutely, it's a tight fit, Luke agreed. Chrissy began, in that case. But we cut her off. Remember, it's a storage room, so it's supposed to be cramped, I chuckled. Exactly. Until the official contract is done, this is how it has to be, Luke concluded. This left Cody and our in-laws utterly confused. Then Luke dropped a bombshell. Oh, by the way, both of us are moving to Boston next month. Luke smoothly explained that we had both originally been offered positions at the corporate headquarters but had turned them down because we were living with my in-laws. However, now that the obstacle of living with them was removed, we had both accepted the transfers and happily received internal notifications for positions at the corporate headquarters. Even better, if all went well, we could be working there till retirement. As luck would have it, Luke's colleague, who was going overseas for an extended period, wanted to sell his high-rise condo. Everything fell into place quickly. You guys are going to live in a high-rise condo in Boston? Man, life sure does throw some curveballs, doesn't it? Cody remarked. Totally. If Cody and the gang hadn't told us to move out so they could live here, we wouldn't have stumbled upon this jackpot, I replied. But how could we even afford a high-rise condo? That seems unreal, Chrissy questioned. That's thanks to Alisa's dad. He provided the down payment, Luke revealed. Alisa's dad just gave you the down payment? Cody asked, surprised. Yes, my sister is inheriting the family property, so this is sort of a trade-off. Plus, a previous owner asked if we could hold on to his modern altar until, upon my return to the country, I proposed lowering the asking price, and he agreed, securing a significant discount. However, hearing about the extent of the discount, Christy, who was standing nearby, burst into tears, exclaiming, "That's so unfair. I'd rather have a high-rise condo in Boston than live in Atlanta." Suddenly, the in-laws, who had been quiet all this time, switched gears and started fawning. Well, it looks like Luke really has it together, doesn't he? Like mother, like son. Luke is following in my footsteps, they chimed in. Ignoring their comments, Luke turned to me and said, living in a high-rise in Boston, everyone's going to be so jealous. When are you moving? We must visit. If we're going to Boston, you should come too, I suggested. The idea seemed to intrigue them. However, the mood shifted when Cody and Christy stopped their arguing and snapped at the in-laws. "What are you talking about? Cody's being downsized, so you're going to have to support us. Plus, until I find another job, Christy will have to go back to work early from her parental leave. You'll have to take care of her household chores and the twins," they confronted. As tension mounted, Cody and Christy marched up to the in-laws who were carrying the twins. The babies, sensing the tension, started crying, waking up the entire neighborhood. Noticing the neighbors gathering at a distance from the garage, the in-laws turned beet red. Luke finally intervened, addressing Cody and the others. "Stop just standing there. Exactly, these guys are trying to take advantage of us, your parents." Luke's laughter echoed as he continued, "So, this is like a battle of wits between a raccoon and a fox, huh?" Turning to the bewildered faces around him, he grinned and explained, "If both couples, us and you, don't work, our family finances will collapse next month." Fuming, Christy asked what this meant. I chimed in, "Christy, you thought if Cody lost his job and you moved into the in-laws' rental home, you could just push the utility bills and groceries onto them, right? Well, our income was running this house and you can't count on it anymore." "I've never heard about this, exactly what we're telling you now," I admitted, puzzled. "Oh, and you'll also need to help with the mortgage payments for the house renovation. It's in father-in-law's name," Luke added. "Why is it in his name?" I questioned, catching the in-laws off guard. Luke took over, explaining, "I wanted the loan in my name since I was paying for it, but Dad insisted it would be shameful. So we used this property as collateral. Until now, we've been transferring money into Dad's account to cover the loan. Cody, you'll need to chip in starting next month." Of course, the in-laws and Cody were against it, but Luke firmly declined to continue payments. "We're going to give up the inheritance. So Cody, as the one who will inherit, you better take good care of your parents and the family home," I firmly told him. "But children are still obligated to take care of their parents, right?" my mother-in-law insisted. Luke brushed it off, saying, "Well, considering we've been covering your living expenses and loan payments for the past 2 years, I'd say that pretty much balances out any future caregiving costs I'd have as a son, don't you think?" "Let's go home, love," Luke said, looking at me. "Goodbye, everyone. I doubt we'll meet again." "Take care," I said, bidding farewell. The next day, Luke and I sold off the furniture and appliances we had moved from the main house, along with 2 cars we wouldn't need anymore. When Chrissy texted us asking for them, I simply replied, "Why?" and blocked her. After that, the special leave granted for our job transfer wasn't enough, so we had to use up our remaining paid vacations to finally finish moving into the apartment. Buying the high-rise condo would take more time, so for the first year, we decided to rent, thanks to the generosity of my boss who owns the place. As the weekend arrived, bringing a bit of calm after the storm of recent days, we gazed at the city lights, and Luke broke the silence. "I know I've been a hassle this time, but thanks for sticking with me," I said, feeling grateful for Luke's patience. "What's with the formal tone all of a sudden?" Luke joked, but then his expression turned serious. "When we first got married and the idea of living together came up, I should have thought things through. But back then, I was just happy you chose me over Cody, who I'd been compared to since we were kids." He continued, reflecting on how we had mindlessly followed his parents' wishes until they told us to move out to make room for Cody and his family due to the company restructuring. It struck me, how could they say that after being such a burden on us financially and otherwise? Luke wondered aloud. "And then I thought about how much your parents must worry about you given your situation." He explained that he sent an apology email to my parents, and their response was heartening. "If we promise to make our daughter happy in the future, the past can be forgiven." Encouraged by this, when they discussed the down payment, they lent it to us without a hitch. Luke made a promise to do everything in his power to protect our life together, just the 2 of us and our future children, if we were blessed to have them. However, on the other hand, it seemed my in-laws were struggling. Despite pulling from their retirement income, they could barely afford the loan for the home renovation. With Cody's attempts to find new employment proving futile, they were forced to make do with Christy's salary now that she had returned to work. Arguments were frequent, often loud enough to hear outside the house. A former colleague even reached out to me, mentioning gossip about them skipping town, as they had cut off all contact with Luke and me. They even resorted to reaching out to my parents, but my dad immediately changed his phone number, seeing it as a small but significant step, given how they had belittled my family and neglected pre-marriage courtesies. Now, they had almost no way to get in touch with us. What goes around comes around, I mused.
Becca, you're still as inconsiderate and useless as ever. This trip was something my son and I were excited about. You, who had no part in planning it, can leave now. My mother-in-law starts criticizing me as soon as my husband steps away from the table. We were on a trip abroad that my husband wanted me to organize. Well, that she's going to be like that, I might as well go home. What happens between them after that doesn't concern me. I'm Becca, a married woman working for a big company. Since my job is flexible, I mostly work from home, so I spend a lot of time there. My husband Jack always tries to show off and act like he's better than everyone else. He loves spending money but never chips in for our household expenses. I didn't notice this side of him when we were dating, but after we got married and started living together, it became more obvious. His mom loves boasting about him. I've heard of moms who adore their sons, and I was ready for that to some extent. But she's stubborn and won't listen to anyone else's views, not even her husband's, because she thinks her son is the greatest. She really doesn't like me. Every time we see each other, she makes snarky comments. She's especially bothered by the fact that I'm financially comfortable relying on my son's income alone. She keeps pestering me, saying, "You're still young. You should get a job outside the house." I tried explaining countless times that I do work from home, but she just sees it as a part-time gig. She assumes I'm just pretending to work, sitting at my computer. She probably thinks I'm playing games all day instead of doing housework, seeing me as a useless wife. My husband knows how I work, but he's never bothered to explain it to his mom. Even when she brings it up in front of him, he ignores it. I've asked him to clarify things, but he just wants us women to sort it out ourselves and leaves it all to me. He even says he doesn't want to deal with problems. Once, when I kept pushing him to take action, he threw a completed divorce paper at me. It hurt to be treated like that, and I considered divorcing him. But I heard divorce is even more complicated than marriage. If it's harder than what we're going through now, it could be a bigger problem, so I ended up giving in to my husband's argument. I realized that my husband always puts his mother first. It's frustrating, but I know I have to find a way to handle her without causing more trouble. I didn't agree to divorce because my feelings change, but it seems like my husband thinks I'm still madly in love with him and didn't want to break up. His arrogant attitude keeps getting worse. It's cute when a child tries to act mature, but it's a major turnoff in an adult. I've learned to brush off his arrogant remarks and pretend not to notice his actions. There's another reason why I didn't divorce him. Because of my husband's job, we live far away from my in-laws. We only see them once or twice a year. I thought I could handle that, especially when everyone was making a big deal about having 9 days off in a row. Even during vacations on weekdays, both my husband and I were usually working. For me, American holidays don't matter much since I adjust my schedule based on international needs. And for my husband, he simply wasn't taking 9 consecutive days off according to the calendar. When he came home after his first day back at work, he suddenly said, "Let's go on a trip abroad." When I asked what he meant, he explained that his coworkers had taken time off to have a 9-day holiday for an overseas trip, and he felt left out. He was quite proud of his idea, but it just left me baffled by his childishness. But since I haven't traveled this year, I suggested we take a trip within the country. My husband has never traveled overseas, so if we were to go abroad, he'd need to get a passport. It wouldn't be an issue with you. You're fluent in several languages. I studied abroad and traveled a lot before marriage. Besides English, I can speak Spanish and a bit of Chinese if needed. When my mom back home got into Korean dramas, I learned Korean with her, but I haven't had much chance to use it, so I'm not very confident. Sure, I might be better at languages than my husband, but getting passports isn't as easy as he thinks. I tried to convince him to travel abroad in the summer or winter, but he wouldn't budge. Instead, despite having no experience, he chose the destination, took time off without permission, and expected me to handle the logistics. It's not a guided tour. Why should I deal with strangers? He even argued that English is universal, and we wouldn't have any problems just the two of us. I thought maybe it would be okay, but before I knew it, he said, "Yeah, I'll make sure to bring Mom along. You'll handle that too, won't you? Taking care of two inexperienced travelers is too much for me alone. You should show some respect for your elders once in a while. You might even earn some brownie points by doing so, my dear devoted wife. It's for your own benefit, Becca. You should appreciate it," he said, making it sound like he was doing me a favor. Arguing against it seemed pointless. So I quietly made the reservations as my husband instructed, and I came up with a plan to handle everything from applying for my mother-in-law and husband's passports to booking flights and hotels. It was a lot of work, but to execute my plan, I patiently fulfilled all of my husband's wishes and crafted a flawless itinerary. On the day we flew overseas, my mother-in-law, who didn't know about my problems, happily said, just as I expected from my son, "We must be flying in fancy seats, right?" I bet my husband boasted, saying he arranged everything and planned the trip. But the truth is, I did all the work, and he did nothing. They left all the paperwork and planning to me. Even though they hardly knew anything about airports, they wandered around on their own while I dealt with everything. They were clueless even when it was time to board, and I struggled to find them. The airport staff even asked, "Should we announce your boarding gate?" Becca didn't tell us. It was chaotic, but they didn't seem sorry. They complained that I was planning to have fun alone during the flight. They behaved quietly, but it was frustrating and embarrassing every time they called a flight attendant. After a few hours, we reached the country we were visiting. I thought I could finally relax at the hotel after going through immigration. But suddenly, my husband looked sick and said he needed the bathroom. He handed me his bag and hurried off. I don't get why he got sick when we ate the same food. He had been smiling and talking to the flight attendant he liked. Maybe it's karma catching up with him. Then my mother-in-law started complaining, saying, "Becca, you're such a thoughtless daughter-in-law. How long are you staying here? My son planned this trip for me, just the two of us. You're just here for a free ride. You don't even work. It's bold of you to think you can enjoy this trip without contributing. Go home." I replied, "Are you sure? I can't enjoy myself with you around." She said, "Okay then, I'll leave." So I gave my husband's suitcase back to my mother-in-law and kept only my small bag. I didn't look at her and walked away. She looked surprised, which was funny because she had just told me to leave. I tried hard not to laugh. My husband kept running to the bathroom, so we didn't see each other. Luckily, I got a ticket back to America. I had planned to go home alone if I got the chance. I wouldn't mind being a guide if we got along, but not with them. It's too stressful, and I wouldn't gain anything. I can't help but smile when I think about what they'll do without me. They only speak English, but they can use translation apps on their phones. But I can't imagine my husband, who likes to brag, doing that. After safely making a few side trips, I went straight to the fancy hotel where my parents were waiting. My husband, Jack, wanted me to show respect to my parents, so I treated them to a luxury trip in upstate New York. They were supposed to travel there leisurely, enjoying the sights and meals along the way. I managed to meet up with them earlier than planned, which surprised them. When I quickly explained what happened, they were shocked. They couldn't believe I agreed to Jack's request. My phone was buzzing with calls and messages from Jack, but I ignored them. I turned off my phone and enjoyed my time with my parents. After our celebration, I got a call from the embassy when I got home. Here's what happened. Jack came back from the bathroom and couldn't find me, so he got really angry. He tried calling me but couldn't reach me, so he went to the hotel alone. But he didn't know where to go and got really confused. Someone who didn't speak English well offered to help and said they'd take him to the hotel, but instead, they robbed him and my mother-in-law. They took all their money, passports, and valuable things. When the police found Jack looking lost on the street, they took him to the embassy for help. That's how he managed to contact me. The embassy asked me to come and get him. He couldn't get any money because his wallet with his bank cards was stolen. But I wondered why I, a stranger, had to help him. I told him I was already divorced from him. The truth is, I kept the divorce papers he threw at me a while ago. At the time, I decided not to go through with the divorce because it seemed like too much trouble. But now I had had enough. I filled out the divorce papers as soon as I got back to the States. Surprisingly, the divorce went through smoothly. I already had a new place ready, and I signed the lease while planning my trip. I didn't want to use the furniture I shared with him. It made me uncomfortable. I planned to buy all new furniture for my new place, so I packed for both my trip and the move. I only need to bring my work tools and favorite clothes to the new place. I can easily have everything else delivered by a courier at a later time. The embassy staff didn't ask me anything else, and our talk was over. Later, it seems my ex-mother-in-law convinced my ex-father-in-law to help, so my ex-husband Jack and ex-mother-in-law could come back to the States. But then Jack, who was really angry, contacted me. "You left me and divorced me without even telling me, abandoned me." "No, I just followed your mom's orders to leave. If you're upset, talk to her. And don't forget about the business class flight I arranged for your return. It was my goodbye gift." I also reminded him that he was the one who first mentioned divorce. "I only filled out the divorce papers you had ready, doing what you wanted. Do you think making excuses like that will work? How much more do you want to embarrass me?" Embarrassed? How? If you want to feel embarrassed, I have an even better story. Want to hear it? What is it? Did you know you're a regular at a strip club? You're spending a lot of money on a favorite dancer there instead of helping with household expenses. But when her demands got too much, you ended up in debt, right? I found a debt collection letter for Jack at our house and had an investigation agency look into it. Despite Jack being a big spender, his obsession seemed to push the dancer away. She hoped he'd stop coming if she kept asking for more money and gifts. I wonder how Jack felt when he heard that. It's quite embarrassing, isn't it? If you cause any more trouble or contact me again, I'll tell your company about it. Understand? Being disliked by the dancer he liked so much would be a huge blow to Jack's ego. If this got out, it would be very embarrassing for him. Jack, who had been aggressive until then, just said, "Okay," in a weak voice and hung up. A few days later, my ex-father-in-law reached out to me. He said he had also divorced my ex-mother-in-law. I thought it was unnecessary since we were no longer family, but he wanted to share what he had found out about her true nature. He had become suspicious of her spending and discovered that she had used up his retirement savings on beauty treatments and cosmetic procedures. I had no idea about this since I'm not familiar with those things. When he asked for a woman's perspective, I couldn't help much because I hadn't noticed anything either. Maybe seeing her only once a year made the changes more obvious, but I truly hadn't seen any. I even asked him, "Are you sure it's for beauty treatments? She spent a lot, but I don't see any visible changes." Perhaps there were small changes that only my ex-mother-in-law could notice. It seemed like a waste of money to me. Naturally, my ex-mother-in-law, who was left with nothing, turned to her son Jack for help. But Jack, who used to be the family support, is drowning in debt. Since our divorce, he even lost his apartment because he couldn't pay the rent. Now, he and his mother are living in a rundown apartment, but his mother refuses to work and keeps spending on beauty treatments. Jack is struggling to pay off his debts and cover his mother's expenses while working nonstop. It seems they still care about appearances, even though their living conditions have worsened. If they're okay with it, I won't interfere. But I heard from others that the quality of the beauty treatments has dropped, and she looks much older now. As for me, I appreciate the peace and freedom to focus on my work without anyone controlling me. It reminds me of the importance of living within my means. My mom spent a lot of my money on my sister's wedding, but I stopped it by freezing the account. I'm facing a tough situation. My mom and sister have been using me for a long time, and now it's gone too far. I want to stop them, but I worry that cutting them off completely would make life hard for them. I'm tired of always giving in to their demands. I'm 38 years old, married with 2 kids, and I've been living in Ohio for 6 years since I got married. I originally come from Houston. My childhood was tough because my parents got divorced and my dad left. When I was 10 years old, my parents split up. I was 5 when it happened. They say it was because my dad thought my sister wasn't really his child. This made them get divorced. Dad let mom keep our house and he moved out. He paid for my schooling but not for my sister's. He didn't give money to support her, and I don't know why mom didn't ask for it. Maybe that's why people believe Dad's claim about my sister. Dad wasn't around much during my childhood. Sometimes my dad would come to my school to pay for my fees and bring me gifts. But when I started high school, I reached out to him, and since then, he's been a big part of my life. He even came to my wedding, even though my mom didn't like it. Over time, I grew closer to my dad than to my mom. He visited me in Ohio twice after I moved here, but then he got very sick, and we lost him last year. Mom didn't like how close I was to my dad, and she started acting distant. To make her even more upset, my dad named me as his heir. He got married again after divorcing my mom, but he didn't have any kids with his new wife. My dad always said I was his only daughter. Mom and my sister didn't like me because Dad favored me, and I got to inherit his $400,000 trust fund. But it's not just about the money. Dad supported me through school, so I got a better education than my sister. This meant I went to better schools and colleges and had a better life overall, thanks to the money Dad gave us after the divorce. I was 10 when they split, and by then the money for my education had already started coming in. I was 12, so Mom couldn't control it much. The money for my schooling went straight to the school, and later to college from the support Dad gave us. Mom did use some of the money for my sister and for things around the house. I wasn't a dumb kid, so my mom tried to keep me happy so I wouldn't complain. I won't say my mom and sister were mean to me when I was growing up, but they didn't really like me, and they were pretty close to each other while I felt left out. Plus, I was smart, not just in school but clever too. I wasn't someone they could push around easily. I think that's why my mom never mistreated me. Nowadays, my problem is the $400,000 my dad left for me. Ever since my mom and sister found out about it, they keep asking me for money. Actually, this isn't the first time they've asked for money. I've been helping them financially since I started working. As I made more money, their needs grew. I don't owe them anything, but I help them because they're family and they don't make much money. My mom works as a cashier and my sister works in a store. Together, they don't make half as much as I do, so I feel like I should help them. We might not be very close emotionally, but they've never been mean to me. I hope you understand what I'm trying to say and that I'm not confusing you with my feelings. A few months ago, my mom called me and said she wanted to fix up our house. Over the years, the walls, ceilings, and floors had gotten really damaged. Since Dad left, we hadn't been able to keep up with repairs. The house hadn't been painted, and the wiring was messed up. The ceilings and walls were falling apart in places. We never had enough money to take care of the house. Mom said it was getting hard to live there, especially during storms. She went to the bank to ask for a loan, but the interest rates were too high. I knew she wanted me to give her the money for the renovations, but neither of us said it directly. It was an awkward talk, so after that, I started ignoring her calls. She doesn't call me much, usually just once a month, but last month she called me 3 or 4 times. When I finally answered her call, Mom said it wasn't safe to stay in our house anymore because it was falling apart in bad weather. This time, she was direct and asked me for money. She promised to pay it back bit by bit. I asked her how much she needed, and she said $100,000. I was shocked. I didn't have that much to lend. She hinted at the inheritance money. I was angry but didn't want to talk about it. I said I could only lend $50,000. She agreed. Later, I realized I was too quick to offer $50,000. I could have just ignored her, but now that I'd said it, I had to lend her the money. I didn't feel good about lending such a big amount. My husband suggested that I lend the money bit by bit and check on the progress of the house before giving more. I told my mom I'd send $50,000 in parts. I had an old account in Houston that I hadn't used, so I activated it and sent $10,000 there. I gave Mom access to that account. She asked why I didn't send the money directly to her account, and I made up an excuse. It was actually my husband's idea. I'm not very hopeful that she'll pay it back, but let's see how it goes. Update. I can't figure out exactly how my mom and sister tried to trick me for easy money. It's been 2 months since I started lending money to my mom for the house renovations. I've given $20,000 so far, and I'm not giving any more after this. I always knew they were only nice to me for my money, but I never thought they would lie to me this much just to get money from me. If they had been honest with me, it wouldn't have hurt so much. Recently, I found out that my sister is getting married, not from my family, but from one of my school friends. My friend's husband is a wedding planner, and my sister has been working with his agency to plan her big wedding. They're calling it a grand wedding. I don't think my sister knew that I'm friends with them. A wedding worth $50,000 is definitely grand. It hurts to find out about your sister's wedding from someone else. I wasn't even told about it, let alone invited. I thought it would be a small and intimate wedding with just a few people, but my friend told me the guest list was around 100. It was heartbreaking not to even be among those 100 guests. Feeling sad about it is one thing, but I'm more concerned about the money. Where did my sister get the money to organize such an extravagant wedding? It was held at one of the best venues in town, with unlimited food and drinks, and top-notch decorations and flowers. I checked the bank account where I was sending money to my mom for her supposed renovation project, but it was empty. I called Mom to ask if the renovations had started. She said yes, she hired a renovation company, but the work hadn't begun yet. I couldn't stand her lies. Until then, I wasn't sure if they were really using my money for her wedding. But the thought of them spending a lot on her wedding while still taking money from me for the house renovation disgusted me. I briefly thought about flying to Houston to check things out myself, but I realized it wouldn't be worth it. Instead, I called my aunt, who lived nearby my mom's house. I asked if she knew about my sister's wedding, and she said yes, but she wasn't invited either. Mom doesn't get along with my dad's side of the family, so it makes sense. She also mentioned that my sister's wedding had become the talk of the neighborhood. I mean, just a few years ago, their house was falling apart, and now they have a brand new house and a lavish wedding. Hearing this made me feel dizzy and confused. Mom told me the house still needed repairs, but my aunt said it looked new with fresh paint. Then I remembered about 6 months ago, Mom asked me for $20,000 for her knee surgery. I called Mom to ask where she had the surgery done. I lied, saying a friend needed details for her dad's surgery. Mom struggled to remember and couldn't give me any information about the hospital or clinic. She seemed caught off guard and hung up, saying there was a network issue. When I called again, her phone was off, and she didn't answer for days. I sent a text, but she didn't read it. I realized she was lying. The money I gave her for the surgery was probably used for the house renovations, and the money she's taking now is likely for my sister's wedding. I also found out my sister got engaged on our front lawn with decorations and wine. I felt like I'd been living in the dark because I had no idea they were living so lavishly and pretending to be poor to get money from me. So I decided to cut them off. I stopped sending money to that account, and when Mom called or texted, I ignored her. My sister, who never called before, tried calling, but I ignored her too. I'm done with their lies and manipulation. Just because I make more money than them, and my dad left me an inheritance while giving them nothing, doesn't give them the right to take advantage of me with their lies. I've decided to spoil my mom's princess's big day. Update 2. I was right about my mom. When I ignored all their attempts to reach me, my mom called my husband. Let me tell you, my husband can be a bit of a party pooper. I warned him not to talk to them, but when my mom called him, he did. She started crying, saying I was avoiding them. They needed money to finish the renovations, and I had broken my promise. My husband spilled the beans. Yes, he did that. I wanted to smack him on the head. He told her that I knew the truth, that she'd been using me for money, and that the money was really for my sister's wedding, which is why I cut them off. I was really angry because I wanted them to suffer for their deception, but my husband ruined everything. He also told my mom that we knew she lied about the knee surgery and used that money for the house repairs. After that call, my mom bombarded my phone with apologies. She said it was all a misunderstanding. She borrowed the money from someone for the house repairs and was paying them back with my money. It was another lie. After her constant calls and messages, I said I'd talk to her only if she promised to tell me the truth. She agreed. When we spoke, she finally told me everything. She said my sister wanted a big wedding, but they didn't have the money for it, so they decided to ask me for it. It was my sister's idea to use the excuse of house renovations to get the money from me. They knew I hadn't been to Houston in years and wasn't in touch with anyone there, so I wouldn't know the house was already renovated. I asked her why she didn't just tell me the truth and ask for money directly for the wedding. She said my sister didn't want that. She said she didn't want to ask me for a favor directly. Can you believe that? I told her I knew she used the knee surgery money I gave her to fix the house. She went silent. I told her I knew everything, so there was no point in hiding it. She said the house was falling apart, and my sister's in-laws were coming to visit, so they had to fix it quickly. They couldn't think of a better reason to get money from me in a hurry, so she panicked and called me, saying the doctor wanted her to have urgent knee surgery, and I sent the money right away. Even though I stayed strong on the call, I was crying inside. How could my own mother deceive me like this? I know they have money problems, but that doesn't give them the right to manipulate me and take advantage of my emotions. After I heard the truth, I hung up and cried for hours. I can't remember the last time I cried so much. Maybe when my dad passed away. I missed him terribly that day. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from Mom asking me to send the rest of the money so they could keep planning the wedding. It disgusted me so much that I wanted to scream at her. If she wasn't my mom, I think she was really selfish. She didn't show any regret. All she cared about was money. They didn't even invite me to the wedding, not even out of politeness. When the truth came out, I felt so frustrated that I blocked both of them. I also warned my husband not to talk to them, and if he disobeys me again, he'll sleep outside in the cold. I'm serious about this. I'm keeping in touch with my aunt, and she told me the wedding is next month. I didn't tell her about the money, but I know my mom and sister are struggling more and more each day to make the wedding they wanted happen. Good for them. Update 3. Mom and sister kept calling and leaving voicemails until the wedding day, asking for money, but I didn't give in. On the wedding day, Mom's last voicemail said she was ashamed of me and disowned me. It hurt so much. I cried a lot in front of my husband. People might say I'm mean for ruining my sister's wedding. Mom called me arrogant and selfish too. But she never thought about her lies. She tricked me for so long. I helped them because I felt like I had to. I thought of them as family, but to them, I was just a way to get money. On the wedding day, my friend, whose husband was the wedding planner, called. She said the wedding might be canceled because they weren't paying for it anymore. I asked my friend how much they paid for the wedding so far, and she said $20,000. I said that's enough for a nice wedding, but she said my sister ordered fancy decorations and food, and the location alone cost $20,000. She asked if I was going, and I said no, I had other plans. My friend knew I wasn't close to my mom and sister. To be honest, I felt upset because I felt like I ruined my sister's wedding. For a moment, I thought about giving the rest of the money to my friend to finish the wedding as planned, but then I remembered my mom's voicemail disowning me. What's the point of helping them if they disown me in the end? Maybe my actions weren't great, but they were a reaction to their hurtful actions. I turned off my phone and spent the day with my kids to keep my mind off things. The next day, my friend called again, upset with my sister because the wedding made her husband look bad in the business. On the wedding day, Mom and sister begged her husband to arrange something basic for the wedding and promised to pay $10,000 more. He managed to get decent food and decorations because the $20,000 advance covered most of the venue cost. But guests and the groom's family criticized the arrangements, and my sister blamed the wedding planner. She said he messed everything up. My friend's husband wanted to tell the truth, but Mom begged him not to ruin my sister's life. He stayed quiet and took the blame. Plus, they hadn't paid the promised $10,000 yet. I felt so embarrassed. I didn't know what to say. My friend said she wasn't blaming me, just sharing her frustration. I felt bad for my family's embarrassment, but also embarrassed they blamed the planner. My husband said they got what they deserved, and I shouldn't worry about them. They brought it on themselves by being dishonest. I'm relieved to stay away from their lies and tricks. Mom disowning me turned out to be a blessing. I don't have to deal with their lies anymore. On to the next chapter. My husband dropped a bombshell yesterday. He confessed that he's in love with my sister, but he said it when he was drunk, so I don't know if it's real. We all had dinner together with my sister and her husband, and we drank a lot. After they left, my husband and I had sex. We were tired, so we kept drinking wine, listening to music, and having a good time. My husband seemed happy, like he always does when he's drunk. We talked about my sister and her husband, and out of nowhere he said, "I'm so in love with sister's name." I was shocked and asked, "What?" He said, "I'm crazy about sister's name. I wish I could kiss her, she's amazing." He had this dreamy look on his face and kept smiling. I asked him if he was really drunk, and he said, "Probably." It hit me hard, even though I was also drunk. I just sat there silently, and he seemed lost in his thoughts with a smile on his face. I went to bed feeling confused and upset. This morning, I woke up sober and all those memories came rushing back. What my husband said is haunting me, and I feel shattered inside. He hasn't mentioned anything and seems fine, just dealing with a hangover. I don't know what to do now. He's always had a good relationship with my sister, so should I ignore what he said when he was drunk? Maybe it was just the alcohol talking? Should I wait for him to bring it up? I'm not even sure if he remembers. And what about the sex we had? It felt different. Even though I enjoyed it and thought it was amazing, he seemed different, more passionate and loving. He kept saying, "I love you, you're amazing." My sister recently lost weight and looked stunning in a form-fitting dress yesterday, and we all complimented her. She was really happy about it. I'm not sure why I'm mentioning this, but maybe it's important. I'll definitely talk to him about it when he's not hungover and can think clearly. I'm torn about whether to believe the saying, "drunk mind speaks sober thoughts," because alcohol can cloud judgment. I'm not sure if I can fully believe that alcohol alone could make someone confess love for their sister-in-law. Even if he denies it, do you think you can get past this? Because I believe he'll deny it. If I were you, I wouldn't feel comfortable with my husband and sister being together again, and that's not good for a marriage. I think he was probably just expressing his attraction to your sister in the moment. Honestly, when people's inhibitions are lowered, they might mix up feelings of lust and love. So regardless, you need to talk seriously with your husband. No one else can answer for him, and even after talking, it might be really hard for you to move forward. From experience, I know that even if it's just lust, you might carry this experience with you like a shadow. If you both want to try to make things work, I suggest going to couples counseling and getting therapy individually to help you both move forward in a healthy way. I wish you all the best and hope for a brighter future for you. I'm really sorry you're going through this. Something similar happened to me once. My ex said, "I love you," but he used my twin sister's name instead. When I corrected him, he acted like he made a mistake. But he didn't. He was actually in love with my sister. He was only dating me to get to her. You need to have a serious talk with your husband about this. It makes no sense for him to date you if he's interested in your sister. No sister would ever accept her sister's ex. At least, that's what I thought until she dated him after I. Our upbringing was tough, and our relationship wasn't great because our parents often compared us and put us against each other. I agree, most of the time, that's the worst way to handle it. It would be much better to be friends with their siblings instead of getting involved with them romantically. But I guess he wasn't thinking clearly, lol. It's painful to read about. You definitely need to talk to him about it today. He's acting like nothing happened. Do you think he doesn't remember saying it? I agree that drunk words often reveal sober thoughts. Have you ever noticed any behavior towards her that made you stop and think? Ask him directly while you're facing each other. His reaction will tell you a lot. He's always liked my sister. He gets along with my whole family and is friends with my brothers. But my sister is the one he likes the most, and we're very close to her and her husband. We usually do things together as a group. But my sister has always been my best friend, so it seemed normal. If he had only said, "I love her," it couldn't have been just a drunken slip-up. But he made sure to express his feelings clearly. His words weren't just drunken nonsense. They were sincere and showed deep feelings, especially since his inhibitions were down. People say silly things when they're drunk, but they don't usually profess their love for someone like that unless it's important to them. I would bring it up directly and see how he reacts. That should give you a clear answer. Update. Hi, it's been 3 days since I last updated because I'm feeling conflicted. I talked to my husband on Sunday about what happened. He said he didn't remember much about that night, especially after my sister and her husband left and we kept drinking. I told him what he said, but he didn't seem shocked or surprised, just that he didn't remember saying anything. I asked him if he felt that way before we started drinking. He said he's always loved my sister because she's kind and warm. He also mentioned that he thought she looked really beautiful that night, and maybe his drunk self thought she was attractive. He said it's normal for people to be curious about the opposite sex. He's always thought my family is good-looking, and my sister's weight loss gave her confidence, which made her look happy, and he was happy for her. I asked him if he had to choose between us, and he was shocked. He said I'm his wife and the mother of his children, and he loves me. When I asked him to imagine if we had just met and neither of us was married, he got frustrated and said this was getting ridiculous. He doesn't like playing hypothetical games because they can lead to unnecessary fights. After dinner, he reassured me that he loves me very much and that he's happy. He said I shouldn't overthink what he said when he was too drunk to even know who or where he was. I'm still unsure about everything. I appreciate your advice, and I've been thinking about seeing a therapist on my own. It would bother me a lot to think about how much his desire to stay connected with my sister, even if it's just a little, influenced his decision to stay with me. I could never get over the thought of him being intimate with her while using me as a substitute for his feelings for her. These thoughts would keep replaying in my mind forever, making it hard for me to feel connected during intimate moments with him. I'd always be comparing myself, feeling inadequate, and questioning if his feelings for me are genuine. My ADHD would make it even harder for me to believe that his affection for me wasn't just an act. My sister and I are very close, and we live close to each other. I've wondered if he settled for being close to her by being with me. I obsess over every interaction and mention of her, wondering if he's as happy with me as he seems to be with her. I'm not sure if what he's saying is true or if I'm just imagining things now. There's no way to come back from this. It will always be on my mind. I need to trust my instincts and stand up for myself. He admitted his feelings for my sister to me. He's had these feelings for years, but he says he loves me and our life together. We're going to start counseling, and from now on, when I spend time with my sister, he won't be there. He's confessed his feelings for her, but he says he's never acted on them in the past and won't in the future.